Well, welcome back to Writing 242 Technical Communication. We're continuing to make some good progress as we go through the material in this course. Now we're into section 4, where we're going to be talking about drafting, designing, and revising. So in this section, we'll start to be figuring out how we start to get into a little bit more detail of how we actually create the various types of documents that we're going to be leveraging. And so let's spend a little bit of time first in chapter 15, talking about organizing and drafting. So in this chapter, what we're going to get a chance to learn about is how to apply a basic organizational pattern that any document can follow. So as is typically been the case, we're learning about methodology for writing, having more of a structured process to get from an idea to something that is written down well, thinking of the audience, who the reader is going to be, and then getting to a final product with a type of genre, the way that it'll be read. So we're going to use genre to organize and outline the document. We're going to organize and draft document introduction. We use sections and arrangement patterns to organize and draft the body of a document. Then we'll deal with drafting a strong and persuasive conclusion and organizing the document for transcultural readers. So let's start to get into this. First, we'll talk about the basic organization for any document. So these are more general ideas here. For organizing for documents, a reader needs to present information in a useful way. And so your document organization should highlight key points. So you want to make that easily accessible, making the most important information easy to locate. Having bang boxes, bold, sections, subsections, a variety of different ways of how you can be doing that. Arrange the information in a logical way. So that's another way it's going to be easily accessible and allow people to read at different speeds. So want to make sure those are all allowed for. Technical documents tend to share 3 components. And so you have an introduction, a body, and a conclusion. So an introduction, maybe you have 3 main points in the body and the conclusion. So in the introduction, you say what you're going to talk about. Then you tell them what you're talking about. And then you have a conclusion, tell them what you actually told them. So sometimes there's a little bit of overlap or repetition to help make sure the points come home. So in terms of using genres for organizing and outlining, you want to identify your genre to understand which pattern to follow to form your outlining. Outlining helps you find the shape of your document. It will change as new ideas, evidence, or issues emerge. So it can be a living type of thing. And you want to be able to consider slide sorter outlining to experiment with different organizations for the body of your document. So if you're familiar with PowerPoint, it has this feature that you can be looking at all of your information in textual or graphical and textual type of ways, and you can organize things logically. You could also have things in just stubs of paper, sticky tabs, sticky pads, or something like that to get a good flow, or having things written on separate pieces of paper, and you start to get to a logical way that it makes sense to put them together. So there's organizational decisions that you'll have to face. It's using outlining to make decisions about whether you should combine 2 smaller sections. So you'll have an idea of what you want to have for an outline, but you may end up revising it as you're going through the development. Merge a smaller section with a larger section. You may want to divide a longer section. It may be too long, and so the reader may tend to avoid that. And so smaller to the point sections might actually work better. You want to remove any want to tell information that's making the sections too long. And remember, the need to know versus want to know is what we're talking about here, and add any need to know information to sections to make sure that that's easily accessible to the reader. So for organizing and drafting the introduction, analyze the situation, put yourself in the reader's place. There are 6 opening moves in introduction. So first of all, you want to define your subject. That's important. What is it that you're trying to address? You want to state your purpose. What is the purpose that you're trying to address in this document? So the opening sentence may be something that will capture that, or you may have an abstract, depending on the type of genre. You want to state your main point. So early on, that as early on as possible, that is a great thing to do. You want to stress the importance of the subject. Make sure that they understand not only have they started to read, but they should continue to read what you're presenting to them. You want to provide background information so they have the context of what you're trying to be dealing with, and then forecast the content. So you're giving an executive summary introduction in the very beginning. So after you have the introduction, we'll look at the body. And so you want to carve the body into 3 sections, the opening, the body, and the closing. So here, not only we're talking about the introduction, but you have a way that you continue to follow this process. So each section would have an opening sentence, a body, and a closing sentence. If it was in a paragraph, or if it's longer than that, you would have an introductory paragraph, a closing paragraph, and the body would be as long as it takes to get that information conveyed. So having an outline, once again, is a very helpful thing to use. And then we have patterns of arrangement. You want to organize your ideas around patterns of arrangement. So a cause and effect. If you mention the cause, then you want to be talking about the effect in short order after you've mentioned the cause. Comparison and contrast. And so if we do this, that's what's going to happen. And if we contrast with that, then that's what would be the result. Talking about better and worse. You know, what if we have a rosy market versus a not so rosy market? What would those end up being in terms of impacts? Talking about the cost and the benefits. That's also something that can be helpful for a decision maker to make sure that that is clearly laid out. Having if then, so if we do this, then we'll be able to accomplish that. So maybe showing some motivational information of why this would be a great idea in terms of would then give us the ability to do something that hasn't been done before. If there's a choice, either we need to do this or we do that. And so you're clearly laying out the pros and cons of either. Having a chronological order. So you want to go through the whole chronological order in a clear way that the reader is going to be able to pick that up. In terms of problems, needs, and solutions. So here are the things that you'll be laying out. So you can start with a problem, talk about, well, what are the needs that we see that are out there that this problem is just starting to deal with. And so here we're getting to the challenge, to the opportunities, translating a problem to an opportunity, and then talking about solutions, and finally have an example. Go through a whole example, show why you brought it up, why it's relevant. And those would be things that you would be capturing. So we talked about the introduction, we talked about the body, now we're talking about the conclusion. So we have the 5 things related to what we want to capture there. Is first, make an obvious transition. So in conclusion, as a result, here are observations. You have a way that you're making it clear that you're getting to the conclusion. You restate your main points, so what you had in the beginning, and you re-emphasize the importance of the subject. Finally, you then look to the future, number 4, and then finally say thank you and offer contact information. So you want to make sure that they can easily access you if they want to continue to dialogue about this topic. For organizing transcultural information, this gets into how we will be using the kind of language. Identify high content or low content culture. This will affect the expectations placed on the writer speaker. So this is where you need to be forecasting who your readers would be in a transcultural sense for this area. So you use the indirect approach for both introductions and conclusions, and then you want to listen carefully and be flexible. Okay, that's it for this first chapter in this section. Thank you very much.